According to a team of scientists, this is what the Pharaoh Amenhotep III would have looked like in his life, and this reconstruction is said to have been based on scientific data gathered by experts. And this is according to the New York Post, which said, in a big discovery, scientists have reconstructed the visage of Amenhotep III, an ancient Egyptian monarch hailed as one of the wealthiest individuals in history. This feat marks the first time in over 3 millennia that the likeness of this ruler has been brought back to life, as reported by the New York Post. Well, let's see what they say in the article to understand how this team arrived at this face as the conclusion of their research, and what did they use as data to come up with this face. So join me as we go through all the available data we have about this great Nesut, from paintings and statues to DNA and anthropology and even anthropometrics. Let's see if this team of scientists has used all this data in combination to come up with this reconstruction. For I believe any reconstruction that aims to be as truthful as possible must use all this data, if available, in combination to arrive at the truth. So let's see if they pass the test with their new reconstruction. But first, a quick history. Who is Amenhotep III? Amenhotep III is a Nesut of ancient Egypt. For those who don't know, Nesut means Pharaoh. It's the original term the ancient people of Egypt used to use for their ruler. So, Amenhotep III was a Nesut of the 18th dynasty, a ruler of the 18th dynasty. He ruled in the 1300s BC for about 30 to 40 years. His father was Thutmose IV. His son is the very famous Pharaoh Akhenaten, and his grandson is the very famous Pharaoh Tutankhamen. The reign of Amenhotep was a period of unprecedented splendor and prosperity in Kemet. Ancient Egypt reached the peak of its artistic and international power, hence why Amenhotep III is considered one of ancient Egypt's greatest pharaohs. He is also said to have loved hunting so much that he killed so many lions, and he seems to have loved his queen, Queen Tia, very dearly because of all the representations of her that can be found in ancient Egypt. Anyhow, that's it with the little bit of history on this great pharaoh. On to the reconstruction and the data we have. The test begins. So, the way this video is going to be divided is in the following way. To test whether this reconstruction has used every and all of the data available about the pharaoh, first we're going to look at some artwork of the king by the artist from ancient times who depicted him. That is, first we're going to look at some paintings, then we're going to look at some statues. After that, we're going to look at the DNA data we have on the king. Then we're going to look at the anthropology. That is, which peopling and culture did he belong to? What are their physical traits and cultural characteristics? And finally, we're going to look at the anthropometrics of the skeletal remains of the pharaoh. All these will be compared to the new reconstruction as we go to see if it actually matches with the data we already have about the ancient ruler. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Here is the reconstruction. Quick shout out to my friend at the King's Monologue for introducing me to this, because he's the one I saw this from in the first place. Anyhow, this is the face they came up with by reconstructing Amenhotep III, and that is what he came up with. This artist from Brazil called Cicero Moraes, who said, and I quote, "If we are not mistaken, this is the first facial approximation of Amenhotep III. It is our gift to all those who appreciate history." And the New York Post said that he is credited with breathing life into Amenhotep III's likeness. Now let's see what this artist used as data to come up with this. Utilizing data extracted from the mummified remains of Amenhotep III's skull, an international team of experts meticulously reconstructed his facial features, drawing upon contemporary anatomical data, including the dimensions and positioning of his nose, ears, eyes, and lips. Sourced from living donors, the team painstakingly pieced together a faithful representation of the ancient king's countenance. Guys, this is red flag number 1. To reconstruct an historical figure that has an immense amount of portraits, not only portraits, but sculptures about him, and not utilizing those portraits and sculptures to approximate what is going on with his face is already a huge red flag. It plays into that idea of the artists were just not accurately representing the faces. We always know that is always in the case of ancient Egypt, but not in the case of other cultures. But hey, we're gonna see if the data we have matches what they have given us. Number 1, paintings. So, the paintings are going to help us to know what the ancient Egyptians saw in terms of skin coloration and other clues. So here's the first painting we have from Amenhotep III. This is from a tomb named WV22. It's basically the tomb of Amenhotep III. And from WV22 what we get is a brown-skinned man with an afro hairstyle. this reconstruction, which clearly suggests someone who does not have this type of hair, very far from having this type of hair. This guy just gives me Louis V vibes. So his hair wouldn't clearly be like this and be able to do this kind of hairstyles. Oh, it's a wig, Erykah. Come on. Oh, yeah, I had forgotten. Sorry. It's a wig as always. Wigs that simply always have an African hairstyle, right? Anyway, aside from the wig though, we have this very brown skin color. And subnasal prognatism is usually a continental African that would exhibit all those features at the same time. That is type 4C hair, subnasal prognatism, and brown skin all at the same time. Anyway, Philip here clearly does not look like this, but hey, this is not the data they used. So it is strange for me, right? Because there is this available data which could have probably ticked them off that, oh, maybe his skin would have been different in this. Anyway, let's go. Another painting. Same thing. Afro hair still depicted. This is still from WV22. Here still we have the subnasal prognatism on all his variations. And then we still have the afro coming back always when he's not wearing a crown that fully covers his head, meaning it's probably his hair. Anyway, all the images in this tomb of Amenhotep III depict him with this same hairstyle, which shows that in his youth, probably in his 30s and 20s, he had this hairstyle and this was his preferable hairstyle. It's very funny that Philip here, the reconstruction, just so enjoyed wearing this hairstyle and told his artist, hey man, like just depict me with this color here, not this you see on the reconstruction, never, please. On every reconstruction they actually do this skin color. It's never darker than that because they compare it to the modern population, and we know what kind of modern population they always choose. They won't go for the Beja of southern Egypt or the Nubian populations of southern Egypt. No, they would go for the pale northern Egyptians, who are in a large part the result of migration from Western Asia. Anyway, another image still depicting him with this same features, subnasal prognatism, full lips, brown skin, again very brown skin, not the color that Philip had. And by the way, I'm just gonna call that reconstruction Philip because let's be honest, it's not Amenhotep III. Come on, it's just Philip cosplaying an ancient Egyptian king. Shots fired! Shots fired! Anyway, so just compare this close-up image of Philip the reconstruction and Amenhotep III. Look at the striking difference. This is data that is crucial to use in a reconstruction to be like, hey, what did the artist at the time see? This could give us some kind of approximation. Then when you compare to the skull, you will see later that the skull also exhibits this same level of prognatism, which is lacking in Philip's reconstruction here. Brown skin, subnasal prognatism, a striking difference. So why not use these images, these paintings, which is data from the past, to kind of guide you in your reconstruction, at least in the skin coloration and the lips, because the bones won't tell you whether the man had full lips or not. Anyway, let's move on. Another image again, and by the way, these images of the king here, Amenhotep III, the Nesut with an afro, these are images they don't show. Even in the entire article, you will notice it's actually pretty funny when you notice this. You're like, hey, why don't you show any original images by the artists of Amenhotep III? You show us this 3,000 years later reconstruction, but you don't show any in the entire article of the king they're reconstructing. It's really strange. This shows you even the people writing the article, praising the artist, they're like, well, this does not look anything close to what the actual paintings of the ancient artists look like, much less the statues as you will see later. None have this pale skin that Philip has. None has the flat hair that Philip would have. Flat silk hair. None represent that. It's always this brown afro subnasal prognatism being represented throughout the tomb. And again, this is exploring the tomb that was dedicated to the king, because well, that's where most of his paintings would be located, in the tomb. Anyway, same imagery with the brown skin, very brown skin, and subnasal prognatism and full lips. Full lips that Philip here is simply not having. He simply does not have full lips. It's like the artist did not look at any imagery that the artist of ancient time, so lack of respect for the ancients there, he simply did not look at the work of the ancients, probably deeming it as low quality or not trustworthy. Why? Because yours is? You have not seen the guy, you have seen his skull, and we have to believe you. You have to trust you more than the artist who actually saw the man in his living flesh. Come on, man. And then we come to the plat de Resistance, as I call these three images. These three images alone just disprove all this Philip reconstruction by the artist Moraes. No disrespect to the artist, but he did a poor job in this reconstruction. His skill is clearly there at making 3D portraits, but that's about it to me. At least from the work I've seen, it simply really is not there in terms of reconstruction based on accurate data. Anyway, on the top there, we start with the top image. Again, it's an image taken from Tomb WV22. This image is not a made-up image. You can find it in the Louvre Museum in France. On the top there, you have the afro texture, the full lips, the very dark brown skin. On the second image, you have again, same subnasal prognatism, full lips, very dark brown skin. And on the third image, you again have another afro hair texture, full lips, subnasal prognatism, and a dark brown skin. None of them look like Philip here, with his non-existent subnasal prognatism, non-existent full lips, and his protruding nose. So the ancient artists apparently saw Philip here, and they chose to represent this. Man, come on. Even if I was Philip, I would get angry. I would be like, hey, listen, man, I don't have a dark skin like that. Don't draw me like some Nubian. I'm an Egyptian. I'm light skinned, right? Like Zaire West right now. I am light skinned, not brown like that. No, don't. What? Am I a farmer toiling the fields? No. And Moraes has the nerves to say, we were amazed with the final result. Seeing a complete bust with these colors and facial serenity is quite satisfying. You're satisfied with this? Did you see these images from the tomb, Moraes? Come on, man. Come on, who paid you to lie? Anyway, I guess maybe you might be of the school, or the Egyptologists you consulted. They are definitely of the school of these paintings you're seeing in the tombs are not accurate representation of skin color. They saw Philip, but they chose to represent these for some metaphorical reasons. That it's a metaphorical way of representing the people, that the colors of the skin is not that any of that is not true. Why? Because they have no evidence. They have no papyrus saying that these are conventions they're using. None. Actually, we have evidence to the contrary that these are actual representations of skin color. Why? Because when you look at the paintings of the Nubians like this one, where you see a Nubian being depicted as black, then being depicted as brown, and then you see a cow being depicted as brown, then a cow being depicted as black and white, you clearly see that these are not conventions. These are actually colors that they used to see, that they are representing. So Philip here, if any artist saw him, artist out there, come on, let's just be honest here. You saw Philip here, Philip Amenhotep III. Which color would you choose to represent him in his tomb? Would you choose this brown here? You clearly wouldn't. Now, these images were doubted to have existed, but I have a video. I have video evidence, people. I have video evidence. And thanks to the subscriber, Mansa Musa. He goes by the name Mansa Musa on YouTube, but he emailed me under the name of Munes, so I don't know what to call you, Munes, Mansa Musa. Anyway, he sent me this video of someone who went to the Louvre Museum, I think in Paris, and he saw the actual paintings that were taken from the tomb. We can watch it together.
Greetings. Louvre Museum, Paris, France. Now, in terms of phenotype, it doesn't get any better than this. Look at the lips, look at the nose. This is a king, not a minor king. A king that ruled when Kemet was extremely prosperous. I will show you the name. The king Amenhotep III. That's Amenhotep III. This is Akhenaten's father. Here, I have a statue of him. You can also see the lips and the nose. Look at this. Look at this, brothers and sisters. Look at this phenotype. Look at the shape of the nose and the lips. For those three here, it says paintings coming from the tomb of the king in the valley of the west in Luxor. And you have the three references. See there? It doesn't look like a headdress. It looks like his actual hair. Akhenaten's father.
So as you've seen on the video and heard, these are images of Amenhotep III indeed, taken from his tomb. Now these images were reconstructed back then by an artist. We don't know which artist. So this artist did an attempt at reconstructing these images, and I think to this day this is the most accurate reconstruction I've ever seen of an ancient Egyptian painting. I don't know who the artist is. When I was doing some digging to find out who the artist was, I saw somewhere they were saying Afrocentric reconstruction. Oh well, the Afrocentrists seem to be the only people that are for the truth, because look, when you compare these two images, they match. You can even overlay them. I wish I had a software to do that, but I don't. But feel free to go look for these images, then you can overlay them. You will see that they actually match very well. You can even see just by looking at them side by side. He did not recreate the lips, he did not recreate the nose, he did not recreate the eyes, he did not recreate the prognatism, he just drew it as is. All he did was put the colors back, and you can see the colors are already fading. So this was black, so the color is black, as we saw on the other paintings in the tomb, like this one and this one and this one, the color was black. The skin was very dark brown, as you can see it was dark brown, and he did the same for all the paintings and they all match. This is a truthful reconstruction based on data from ancient artists. He respected the work of the ancients to do his reconstruction, and they match accurately. Now, with all this, Philip here simply does not match any of the paintings we've seen so far. His skin color does not match what the artists were representing back then. His lips do not match what the artists were representing back then. His hair does not match what the artists were representing back then. None of his features match what the artists were representing back then. So the reconstruction by Cicero does not pass the first stage of the test, that is the paintings. The data we have on the paintings does not match what we were given in the reconstruction. Now on to the statues. So onto the statues. First statue is a statue of King Amenhotep III, the first ever statue that I've ever seen of the king. Now, if you compare this to King Philip Amenhotep III, cosplayer #1 of Amenhotep III, you can see that none of his features again match. So this is a sculptor. We should at least believe that the sculptor was more accurate when it comes to the features. This is a face different from any other statue you've ever seen of any other pharaoh. But the Egyptologists, they say,
oh no, but the statues are also all the same. They don't really have any difference.
A bullshit? A bullshit?
That's not true. We're not blind, Egyptologists. We are not blind. If you take an image of King Amenhotep III and you compare it to the statue of Sesostris III, completely different. So this is supposedly the peak of ancient Egyptian artistry, and this guy somehow does not use data from sculptors who saw the man alive to reconstruct. Again, full lips are missing, the nose is much wider, and the nostrils are much wider as that of a black person. And Philip here, he looks like your typical European guy or Southern European. So again, it really falls into that thing of, no, the ancient Egyptians were just looking like any European. This is why they probably did not show at least even this bust in the article, praising this artist for his accuracy.
It has been 3,000 years since someone accurately depicted him.
Oh no, man, 3,000 years accurate? This is not accurate. And they praise this guy for his scientific data, bro. Like, come on, bro. You ignore statues and paintings and you are here. You want us to praise you? If you even compare angle to angle, clearly does not match. And then we see another. This one is a painted wooden statue. I know the Egyptologists will tell you, no, it's just a wood that is darkened over time. No, it's paint. It's paint, actually. You can see the paint brushing on the face. And if you compare it to Philip's face, it just tells you that this is a fraud. Massive fraud. We can see a profile view here with paint brushes. It's really brown skin they were going for. And Philip here does not have brown skin. His skin cannot be said to be brown. And you can compare it from the profile view. The subnasal prognatism of the statue is present, while it's not on the reconstruction of Philip here. But their nose is slightly the same. But the skin color is completely off. So there is that. Why am I saying this is a painted statue? When you look at the entire body, it even shows you further that this is painted. Look at the body, you can see it's very dark. And they were going for a painting because you see the exposed area of the face, the paint has faded, while the legs, since they're a much larger exposed area, they tend to remain the same. Anyway, another angle of the statue of Amenhotep III, the wooden statue. Skin is very dark brown. This was a black man. And here they give us Philip from Italy there, or Rome or something like that. And then you see another statue. So there is consistency in the representation of Amenhotep III. The full lips are always present. The subnasal prognatism is always present. He's not an African that had a strong subnasal prognatism. He's an African that has a slight subnasal prognatism. Philip here does not have an upper lip lip, as opposed to most Africans who have an upper lip, right? This is what we call full lips. And again, another image of Amenhotep III being represented. I think this is a much younger version, and the full lips are ever present. Nostrils are always popping. On every statue you can see of Amenhotep III, the full lips are there. Like most statues exhibit this feature of subnasal prognatism and full lips, which Philip here does not have. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the statues. You can see on this other bust that was left of Amenhotep III with the same style as Philip here. I think this is what they were reconstructing, and it's completely different. Philip there does not have an upper lip, so his lips are pretty thin, like in Europe there. But the busts show you that the Nesut Amenhotep III always had very full lips. All the imagery we have available of him exhibit those features compared to the profile view of this head and the head of Philip here. There is no match, and we know the data used is only from the skull. He ignored the statues and paintings. He's losing points already at the basic level. So that's pretty much it for the statues of Amenhotep III and paintings. Now onto the other data we must look at when reconstructing somebody's face. That is the DNA, if it is available, of course. If you don't, then you can just rely on anthropometrics and also the imagery left by his artists. So onto the DNA data. So do we have any DNA data on King Amenhotep III? Yes, we do. We actually do have quite the amount of data, not only on Amenhotep III, but also on his family, thanks to a study done by Zahiawas et al. In 2010, which gave us some DNA data on the Amarna families. What are the Amarna families? The Amarna families are basically the family of Amenhotep III, going to Akhenaten, then King Tut. So in 2010, Zahiawas releases DNA data of this family. Then in 2021, they do a lineage study of King Tut family, and for that they use the technique of SNP markers, SNP DNA markers, which tells you who would be the father of the father of the father and who would be the mother of the mother of the mothers. They do this by using Y chromosomes for males and mitochondrial DNA for females.
Single nucleotide polymorphisms, also called SNPs or SNPs, are variations in a DNA sequence that occur when a single nucleotide in the sequence is different from the norm in at least 1% of the population. When SNPs occur inside a gene, they create different variants or alleles of that gene. Unlike repeated portions of DNA like STRs and VNTRs, in the case of SNPs, it is the sequence itself, not its length, that is useful to forensic scientists. SNPs are common, occurring every 100 to 300 bases along the entire length of the human genome. Mutations in SNPs are very rare, so the sequences tend to be passed unchanged across generations. But because any given SNP is relatively common in the population, an analyst must examine dozens of SNPs to derive a true DNA fingerprint. For this reason, SNP analysis is rarely used in forensic cases.
So in this study, the data was given for this haplogroup that was found in King Tut, and his grandfather Amenhotep III was R1b. And you can see here in the grid, King Tut and Amenhotep III share the same R1b DNA marker, and Akhenaten as well. And all of them are said to be related, with Amenhotep III being the grandfather of King Tut and Akhenaten being the father of King Tut. So the DNA has proven and has matched the historical data that was given. Onto this R1b DNA. What does it tell us about the king that we're talking about in this video? So scientists have managed to kind of map out the world in terms of haplogroups, where certain haplogroups are currently concentrated. So as you can see on this map, for example, you can see that in Africa, you currently have the haplogroups E1A, then E3A, then E1B, then E3B. That means that the haplogroup E3B are currently mostly found in these two regions. And as for the R1b that we are currently talking about, in this modern era, it is currently mostly found in Europe. Now, this often leads people to say, so you see, DNA has proven it that Tutankhamen, Akhenaten, and their grandfather Amenhotep III were related to Europeans. What they forget is that this same haplogroup R1b can be found in the very middle of Africa among the Hausa people, the Chadic people, so in the central region of the Sahara. You can see the R1b haplogroup. And these people, they don't look like modern Europeans, not even anything close to them. They look black, like any other African. If you were to go to Africa, you wouldn't know that these people have the same DNA marker as a European, yet they do. So this R1b does not tell us very much because this is an SNP marker, but this can be very misleading because they can say, oh, because this is currently distributed here, you must look like these people. But what they don't tell you is that often these markers were not even originated by people that look like that. They were often originated thousands of years before those people that looked like that. Those traits that they currently have were exhibited by human populations. So again, this does not tell you necessarily that these people look like this or this ancient person must have looked like this, because he could have easily looked like a Chadic person from the Central Sahara. Now, what is a better pick for associating someone with their DNA to a certain population is the STR DNA, which are short tandem repeats.
A short tandem repeat, or STR, is a region of DNA composed of a short sequence of nucleotides repeated many times. Since the number of repeated sequences in a given STR varies from person to person, pinpointing these variants can be useful in DNA fingerprinting. As the name implies, the repeated stretches in STRs are short, only 2 to 10 base pairs long. For this reason, and because they are dispersed more evenly throughout the genome than the longer variable number tandem repeats, or VNTRs, STRs are favored by forensic labs. Large databases of information on STRs in the general population tell analysts how much variation exists at any given STR location. That information can help forensic analysts determine the conclusiveness of a match between two samples. If 10% of people have the same number of repeats at a given STR, for example, finding a match at that site is merely suggestive that two samples are a match. If two sites with the same prevalence match, the odds drop to 1 in 100 that the similarity is coincidental. If 13 sites match, the odds that any two people would possess such a fingerprint are so small, about 1 in 10 trillion, that the result can be considered a definitive match.
So, has this study ever been done by anybody? Yes, it has. It has been done by the scientist Erykah Badu along with other scientists. They did a study in 2018 using the data from the study done by Isaiah was in 2010, which is data easily available online. So they ran the STR data available on the Amana families, and they used the application, the online application Pop Affiliator, which is an application that affiliates individuals to populations at a rate of 86% accuracy. 86% accuracy. I repeat, 86% accuracy. You put STR DNA data of a person at 86% rate of accuracy, they will tell you that this person belongs to one of these three populations: Sub-Saharan Africans, which is just Black Africans; Eurasians, this encompasses the Caucasian family, so Arabs, Europeans, Southern Europeans, Russians, whatever; and then East Asians, which is the Chinese, the Koreans, the East Asians, basically. So they would run these tests and then they would affiliate you with one of these populations. And so what the team of Erykah Badu in 2018 did was put the DNA data available of the Amana families in Pop Affiliator, and what they found out is that King Amenhotep III is 93% related to Sub-Saharan Africans, so Black Africans. So that would encompass African Americans, Africans from the Caribbean, and Africans from the continent, any African, any Black person out there. So yeah, King Amenhotep III, according to data from his STR DNA, is 93% related to Africans, 6% to Eurasians, and 0.3% to East Asians. As for his grandson, King Tut, is the same, 93.9%. Then Eurasians 4.6%. Then Asians, East Asians, 1.5%. Again, this is data available. You can put them in Pop Affiliator and then you find out these percentages. So for those who might still be doubting, Pop Affiliator is not an application that was created by Afrocentrists out there to have these results. They were created by very serious scientists who did very serious work. So the STR DNA data of Amenhotep III and his son and his grandson give you the match with African people from the continent, so Black Africans all over the world, and they don't give you a match with Eurasians. And his SNP as well. His SNP gives you the R1b DNA. Doesn't tell much, but if you were to go with the history, the imagery that his artist left to us, and the STR DNA, I would go for the R1b that can be found in Africa. And let's not forget that the R1bs, all these markers, E3b, G, whatever, they were all started with people that looked just like Black Africans. It's just that they don't want to say that to people. They just say, oh, look, the modern population of this place has it, so that means this person must have looked like this. No. No. That's not how it works. Tell people the truth. Now, maybe this artist from Brazil only knew about this study from 2020, where they said that the SNP data matches him with Europeans. And so that's why he came up with this. And he never saw the study of Schumacher Keita that related them to Black Africans. So that's probably where he made a huge mistake. Because if you had gone with the STR data and you had gone with the idea that SNP data can be misleading when it comes to the actual features of a person, you would have probably considered the imagery left by his artist to come up with a better conclusion, which is what my friend at the King's Monologue does, for better accuracy, for something closer to the truth. Anyway, now let's move on to the anthropology, that is the peopling he belonged to, the culture he belonged to. Okay, on the anthropology, King Amenhotep III belonged to an African people that has its origins in Northeast Africa and further south in East Africa. We have already gone through this, the history is clear on this. The ancient Egyptians population came from further south in East Africa and from the Central Sahara too. The evidence is very much clear at this point. We know this because we have a lot of archaeological evidence. Not only that, we also have DNA evidence of Black African presence in ancient Egypt at the foundational period. We also have archaeological historical data of this southern origin narrative. We also have linguistic evidence on this southern African origin. This was all reviewed in many of my previous videos. You can check out this video or my response to Metatron, where I just explained to him that, hey, this is where the people came from. This is what the data says. Everyone is clear on that except Egyptologists. When they're asked about that question, they just start blabbering and say, oh, well, it's not clear. Wait. It's pretty much divided between the Arabian Peninsula or the Western Asia and Africa. So yeah, there must have been a mixing. Oh, so the population that must have come from the Near East there and then some from Africa. No. The reality is this: the population that founded the kingdom was Southern African. The population that peopled the region in majority was Black African. Then there was a Eurasian influx in later periods, especially in very later periods where the influx just grew to levels where the Black people that were there did not even have control over their kingdoms anymore. Anyway, but the influx from Eurasia started as early as the Old Kingdom in the 3rd, 2nd dynasty. They were already coming slowly, but they were not the majority. Nor were they the founding population, nor were they the people bringing the culture, the religion, the architecture, the artistry, the innovations. They were not bringing all the important innovations as the Egyptologists, when they're asked this question, want you to believe. They were not. Anyway, so as for the people, as for the culture, they also belong to this African culture with worship and deification of the king, having the king as a representation of God himself on earth, as order on earth, with practices such as burying the king with his attendants when he died in early ancient Egypt, which was still found within Africa as late as in 1800s. So very deep African culture there. There is so much more to talk about in this aspect. Here we're just gonna focus on the visual aspect of it. Which peopling did he belong to? As I've said, the peopling the king Amenhotep III belonged to were people from further south in Africa. So as I said, the Central Sahara and further south in East Africa. Now, who were these people? Well, they looked like this. Okay, this is the image that just ends the debate on the peopling of ancient Egypt in what they looked like. They looked like this, with big flat noses, big nostrils, full lips. Why do I say this? Because this is consistently how they represented the hieroglyphic for face. When they wanted to say face, they drew this. Why would a population that does not look anything like this draw this as the word for face? You see the short cuts there with the big nose, the full lips. You have this face all over ancient Egypt as the face per excellence. And you also have those that have the typical twist of Black Africans. Then you have this imagery of someone around that time as well, a lady of the time with the same beaded jewelry in the hair that East African women still wear to this day, and the same hair texture as many Ethiopian women today, with the same skin tone as many Ethiopian women today. And for the face, you can just see this is a typical Black African woman. We have already gone through this. The major skin tone in ancient Egypt was this brown skin tone that you can see in East Africa, all over Africa. And this is another picture of a king with the same hairstyle that can be found in West Africa. Short, twisted locks, short twists. This is Menkaura, 4th dynasty. This is the people the ancient Egyptian king Amenhotep belonged to. This is what the SDR DNA was telling us. This he is affiliated 93%, not even 50% we can doubt, right? It's 93%. You can't get it that high without it being 100% true that he was just like black Africans all over. This is a very common hairstyle in Africa. Like this was a very common hairstyle in Africa back then. Short twists, afros, you see this in ancient Egypt. This is the people Amenhotep III belonged to. And as for the skin color, consistency, men, women having the same brown skin color, black hairstyles, afros, long braids, long locks, all over. Subnasal prognatisms, type 4 hair being represented all over the place, brown skin, full lips, flat noses, all over the place. These are the attendants of Amenhotep III. This is what most of his attendants were represented like. And not only that, there are many people who called them black, consistently called black by many ancient peoples, many ancient authors. When you look at the Nubians who are called black, and who every scholar, even the Egyptologists, would accept were black Africans, like really black, are depicted in ancient Egypt with this brown skin tone, just like most ancient Egyptians. Then they will depict some Nubians with this black color, because many Nubians had this very dark shade of black. But this was not everyone, obviously, just like we see in Africa today. And also, do you want to know what they represented the people that would have looked like Philip over here? They represented them like this. Yeah, the color changed from the ancient Egyptian and the Nubians. So clearly, they knew that this type of skin color is different from ours, from that of black Africans. Very telling, isn't it? So again, on the peopling, on the culture, they clearly belong to black African peoples. Alright, now on to his family. What did they look like? Okay, we're gonna start with his wife. Look at the wife. This is why they said this was the peak of ancient Egyptian artistry. They'll say this is not an accurate representation. Why does she look different from the king if it was just a normal, conventional, standard representation? The sculptors were not stupid. They knew what they saw, and this is why they represented this man and his wife like this. Now, you imagine this man here being represented like this, looking like Philip? No. And this is another image of his wife, Queen Tia, with your typical black African features and braids. All of it is just black African. Flat nose with big nostrils, big lips, full, all that. Just showing our black Africanness. I love this picture because it matches so well. This is a Kenyan model, and then here's the queen. They have the same lips, they have the same nose, and if you could imagine that this is either a crown or an afro hairstyle, either way, they just look the same. And then you have the typical subnasal prognatism represented in ancient Egyptian artistry and represented in African artistry. This is a piece from the ancient kingdom of Benin, not to be confused with the country of Benin. This is a Benin kingdom princess. Look at her subnasal prognatism compared to that of the Queen of Egypt. This is another imagery of the queen. This is a much younger version of Queen T by her artists. You see this? These people knew what they were seeing, and they want us to believe that they did not know what they were doing, why they chose to represent full lips instead of thin lips, why they chose to represent big noses instead of thin noses. This is another imagery of the queen with her typical African hairstyle that they like to think of as wigs because they don't see their Caucasian silk hair doing this. But an African clearly sees his hair doing this very easily. He can do this hairstyle. This is the people he belonged to. People like this who could do short twists with their type 4 hair. Anyway, full lips all over the place. His son, brown skin, full lips. Very accurate representation here. The artist even went further in the accuracy, but they love to present Akhenaten as this white man from Egypt. No, he was brown. Clearly, by his artists' representations, he was brown. He had full lips, he had a subnasal, very strong subnasal prognatism, typical of black Africans. This man here, skin color, does not match the painting that they did. If you tell me that someone like this can be represented with this color, then you have a problem as a painter. Anyway, these are children of Akhenaten, so granddaughters of Amenhotep III. Look at their faces, look at how their artists were depicting them with them full lips, subnasal prognatism, big noses, just like your typical African. And if you compare this to a piece of Ele-Ife in West Africa, Nigeria there, you can see the similar artistic conventions representing people's features. This is another imagery, a painting of the same sisters. Again, you have the strong subnasal prognatism, the full lips, and their skin color being very brown. And then they have this thing of the skull elongation, a practice found in traditional Africa. The Mangbetu people, for example, were practicing this. And then you have the famous grandson, King Tut himself, with the wooden statue, his famous wooden bust that his artists drew so that his tailors could use it to model clothes for their king. This is the painting they used to represent his face. Brown skin, because he had brown skin. And this is the features they chose to put on the face. And then you have this short bust of King Tut with the subnasal prognatism there. Brown skin again, as always. This is his family. They all look black. Now, has the artist incorporated this data? No. All he used was the skull. He did not look at the paintings of the king himself. He did not look at the statues of the king himself. He did not look at the family of the king itself. He did not look at the peopling. He just looked at modern peopling, and we know what modern peopling he looked at. The northern Egyptians, the white Egyptians. He did not look at the Nubians, the Beja people of southern Egypt. No, he did not look at that. And he did not look at the associated populations culturally and geographically. He did not look at that. He just looked at one region, northern Egypt. He did not look at the surrounding regions like Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia. Those are very significant regions for ancient Egypt, but he did not look at that. He simply did not. Now on to the anthropometrics. For the anthropometrics, we're just gonna do one great thing here. We're just gonna go to an expert on this subject, and that is the King's Monologue. The King's Monologue did a thorough live show on this new piece of so-called scientific reconstruction of King Amenhotep III. And, well, on the anthropometrics section, he just destroys this guy, this Brazilian artist, who thought he did the most accurate representation. So check out the King's Monologue, link in the description to his channel and the live show he did. I urge you to go there to get into the anthropometrics section there. It's gold. You're gonna learn so much, and you're gonna see that very little aligns with the skull. So again, scientific data. Anyway, let's move on to the ending section of our video, and that is, there is an agenda out there. There is an agenda in Western media. There is an agenda in Eurasian media in general. There is an agenda in the scholarly circles, the historical scholarly circles, the Egyptological scholarly circle, to paint Egypt as a non-black Caucasian civilization in Africa. And this started very early on with efforts from Napoleon Bonaparte to make Egypt white European. But it failed over time, of course, because most of the ancient Egyptian paintings, even when they went there, like the guy he sent there, the father of Egyptology, Jean-Paul Young, who deciphered the hieroglyphs, he saw that most of these people he saw on the tomb paintings and the statues he saw looked like black African people, and none of them looked like Europeans. And we have a quote on this. This quote:
And in 1829, after spending several months in Egypt, another eminent French scholar, Jean-François Champollion, later hailed as the father of Egyptology and the decipherer of the hieroglyphs, reached the same conclusion after spending time studying the monuments of Kemet. We find there Egyptians and Africans represented in the same way, which could not be otherwise. But the Asians and the Europeans present significant and curious variants. This was written in a letter to his brother in 1829.
But you still had artists representing the kings they saw very differently from the actuality, from the reality. For example, there is this bust of Amenhotep III that was represented like this by a European artist. You see, they Europeanized the man. This is the actual version, but this is what they painted. Very inaccurate. There is an agenda out there. For example, this beautiful picture of Seti I and his queen. Look at what was put in some French historical book. This is what they want their kids to see. They don't want them to see the originals. This is why you never see the originals in their articles, their media, because it will look like this. Black people all over the place. And they don't want their kids to see this because they'll be like, oh, so the ancient Egyptians were black, right? And they'll be like, no. Then they'll have to justify with some nonsense. So they do this to avoid the awkward questions. And this does not stop in the manuals in school. This continues all the way to YouTube. Look at this guy. He does a video on Amenhotep III. This is history. It's a historical video. This is from the YouTube channel History Explained. So he's explaining history. So I would expect some accuracy by putting the actual images of Amenhotep III in his video, since there are so many, like these 3 statues I'm showing you. No, he shows none in his video. What he shows is this reconstruction he did, or he asked an artist to do. And this reconstruction does not look close to anything we see about Amenhotep III from his ancient artists. But they choose to do this instead of showing the imagery that I've shown throughout this video. Why? If I am to do a video on the life of Amenhotep III, these are the images I'm going to use, not some weird reconstruction. Again, another video. Faces of ancient Egypt, the real faces. Look at what the reconstructions are showing you. And throughout the video of this reconstruction, he won't show you the variety of images. If he shows any imagery, he will show one that matches his reconstruction, but he will ignore the rest. This is the video I was talking about from History Explained. This is the imagery he shows throughout his video. But does it match this imagery we saw from the tomb of Amenhotep III? If you do a video on Amenhotep III, you should be aware that there is a tomb of the man. So you should be aware that there is this imagery. Why not show this imagery? Why show this drawing you made? an agenda. There is an agenda. Because when you see this imagery, the original, you think black man. This was a black king. You don't think that this was a Eurasian man. Throughout his video, it's just these reconstructions. He will never show you something like this imagery, the wooden statue here. All over his channel, it's just this. Hatshepsut, white woman, Thutmoses. He just used the same drawing you used for Amenhotep. And then, boom, Imhotep, white man, Narmer, white man. He looks like a Greek, this Narmer. But the imagery we have of Narmer does not look close to this. Why not put the Narmer bust we have? No, you don't want to, because you have an agenda. And see, all the reconstructions you would see of King Tut, of Ramses II, they will all do this thing of white skin, thin lips, pointy nose, contrary to what we have. Look at the bust of Amenhotep III compared to the reconstruction of Philip Amenhotep III. You don't have the same features. There is an agenda. Why? Because in the article praising this same reconstruction, they never showed any imagery side by side of the original pieces from the artist of Amenhotep III and the reconstruction, because they know people will find it ridiculous that they saw this and they reconstructed this. They know people would find it ridiculous if they saw these two pictures side by side. They'll be like, well, were all the artists just weirdos representing whatever they wanted of their king? Which is strange, because an artist who is doing something for his king would want the most accurate depiction, not some random chosen features and they just slap it on the face and the king is like, wow man, you did such a great job, thank you. So again, there is an agenda out there. This is why you see these kind of reconstructions popping up. It shows you again, they are not willing and ready to move from the propaganda on ancient Egypt being a non-black civilization within Africa. Unless we show the truth, we show them the real images, we push the real images. So this artist from Brazil, he failed the test. All the data that we have available of Amenhotep III was not used. He just used this skull, and even that he failed. Just go watch the King's Monologue video and you will see that even there he failed. They are just pushing this as propaganda. That's why they did not show any of the real images from Amenhotep III's artist in the article, because they know people won't go check who was Amenhotep III, what are the images available out there of him. They won't. So as we're always telling you people, there is a propaganda out there. You tell us, oh, why are you still talking about black Egypt, Egypt being black? Let's move on because hey, I thought everyone knew this. Well, there is a large number of people out there that are still pushing the idea that it's a non-black civilization, that their kings were not black, that their rulers, their priests, their scientists were not black, that the black people in there were very minimal and insignificant members of the society. That's the agenda they are pushing by doing these reconstructions. Anyway, that's the end of the video. We've seen this reconstruction is clearly very disappointing and it shows again the agenda they have. Alright guys, I've said enough here. This was really disappointing, but it was great to have a conversation with you guys again. I'm glad to be back and making videos. Drop a like if you agree that there is indeed an agenda to erase the very strong black presence in ancient Egypt. Share, comment, don't forget to subscribe if you like this sort of videos where we expose this kind of scholarly frauds and share the truth. Right, I've said enough. Kweli Mika is back. Support us on Patreon. There will be more content like this being dropped, live shows and everything. So yeah, see you in the next one. Peace.